everyone, Gaijin here. Sorry for the weird new perspective, we're doing a weird new video. So, as I sat here just thinking about what in the world I could experiment with this new channel, this freedom to basically do whatever I want, I went digging a little bit and I noticed something that was kinda odd. Not bad, but just odd. There is this giant trend of Japanese react videos on YouTube. I don't know how far it goes back and where it really picked up on, but there are just so many videos of Japanese react to blank. Granted, a lot of them are like reacting to Bill Wurtz's History of Japan, and I totally get that. I love Bill Wurtz, don't get me wrong. That would definitely be an interesting video for folks in Japan to make commentary on. I think that's fine. But some of these videos, man, we're hitting Inception levels when it comes to reaction videos, when it comes to the Japanese react video. So I sat here thinking to myself, man, what in the world could I do that's kind of new and interesting for this new channel? And I thought, you know what? Maybe I'm gonna play around with the meta a little bit. What I'm gonna do is, as a Gaijin, someone who is very aware of Japanese culture and what have you, I'm gonna react to some Japanese guy's video. Now, take heart that this is not meant to harass the person I'm talking about. The guy in question is a dude named Nobita. I love this guy. So, what ended up happening is that I got in contact with him, and unlike a lot of other react videos, this one is one that he actually requested. Because we're doing a little collab thing. I'm reacting to one of his most popular videos, which is the top 10 reasons not to move to Japan. Oh boy, ain't this a doozy. And I just recently did an interview over on his channel, so please go check him out. If you came in from his channel, hey, how you doing? But no, please go check out his work. It's super strong. But from here on in, let's see what Nobita has to say about the 10 reasons why you shouldn't be moving to Japan. And I'll kick in and share my own experiences of the points that he makes. So, let's see. Let's get this set up. Ready, and go.
Hey, what's up guys? So before we get into that, let's keep in mind these two things. Number one, what I'm gonna talk about doesn't always apply to every Japanese person or every place in Japan.
Agreed.
This is based on what I see in Japan and my personal experience. You're gonna have a different experience and perspectives about Japan. So I'm sure you're gonna disagree a lot. But let me know after watching this why you disagree. Number two,
don't worry, that's
this
the whole
is
point.
not for discouraging you from coming to Japan. And I'm not gonna be just ranting about how disgusting Japan is.
Alright, hang on a tight second. I want to reiterate personally with my own words what Nobita's saying. What he says and what I say are going to be our own experiences with Japan, and neither of us are going to be discouraging you to not go. We just want you to take into account what our experiences have been and use that as just some sort of a guide. Because, like I just got done talking about, no one really talks about the negative aspects of Japan. Especially in the US, we go in with rose-colored glasses hardcore when it comes to living in Japan, and I just don't think a lot of the negative gets talked about, and it's a discourse that needs to happen. But again, these are our experiences, and we're not telling you what to do. We're just telling you what you might want to expect.
I want you to make sure if Japan fits you and you can go well in this country. If you only watch TV shows or magazines, the impression or message you often get is Japan is great, it's a perfect country. We all agree Japan is awesome and interesting, but you need to acknowledge both good and bad,
yes,
especially if you are moving here. And these can be the reasons you shouldn't move to Japan. Number 10, weather. Now this was
Alright. Man, you know, no, never mind.
It depends on where you live right now, what country you compare with. But at least to me personally, Japan doesn't really have a great weather. As you already know, it's quite hot and humid in summer, and I really hate it. Some people even die because of that every year. Then winter must be great in Japan?
No!
Not so much actually.
It's
of
not!
Course, Japan doesn't have a too cold winter like Chicago or Minnesota, but the Japanese building or apartment can be
citation needed for those of you that, for people who live in Hokkaido and like the northern part of the country. Oh, it gets rough.
Really cold in winter because we don't have central heating, which is quite common in the West.
Nope.
And many people just rely on AC, so it's only partly warm, not whole building. In addition to that, we have quite many earthquake, tsunami, typhoon, or that kind of natural disaster. Number 9.
Okay, no, slow down. Okay, no, there are things that we need to address here. I am so surprised that this is the number 10 spot, because for me, this is like the number 2 or number 1 spot for reasons why you shouldn't move to Japan. Oh my god. Summer, alright, summer. Alright, there is no central cooling. And I will say that in Japan, when it comes to summer, like after the Tsuyu, after the super rainy season, like August and things like that, oh my god, it's wet and hot all the time. You know how you would think that it actually gets cooler as night falls? The moisture, there's so much moisture in Japan during and after the rainy season that heat gets trapped in it and it does not dissipate. So you're gonna have like 90-degree weather with no centralized air conditioning from morning to night and throughout the night. It actually will get so bad that what you have to do, even if you're in an apartment, you have to close off your doors and basically segment off the room in which you are going to be staying in and working in, and it's usually going to be the one with your cooler or your AC unit up on the wall, and you just have to huddle in there. It was torture to go out and cook, because it's like you're cooking in front of a stove in 90-degree weather because you don't have vents in your apartment. You have just one air conditioning unit. It's nuts. And that doesn't even really mention my poor kids. I'm gonna throw a lot of when I was working in Japan in here. One of the things that absolutely blew my mind is that a lot of these kids are in their uniforms, which can be pretty big, and they're doing their schoolwork with no air conditioning. Can you imagine being at school, having no AC, trying to do things like calculus? It ain't easy. It's kind of maddening, and that's the hot aspect, and Nobita is absolutely right. A lot of people do die. Then you got winter. Oh my god, winter. You better familiarize yourself with thermal underwear. If you don't have thermal underwear going to Japan, unless you're in a very new building, you're gonna have a hard time. For those of you that don't know, thermal underwear is basically like long sleeve kind of a mesh that you wear like up on top and down below. It basically is kind of like really thick sleeper clothes that you have to wear underneath. It is the only way that I stayed warm because, again, there's no central heating and cooling, especially in the schools that I taught in. So these poor kids are seeing their breath while they're trying to do their English lesson. I felt horrible for them. The best that we've got are kerosene heaters. And let me tell you, that's not a great alternative. But it is what it is, and it's just, you bear with it, you grit with it. And then as far as the natural disasters goes, as I've said a couple times before in my content, I was there for the March 11th earthquake. I didn't get hit personally by it. I wasn't there with I wasn't there at ground zero or anything like that at the epicenter. But boy howdy, I felt the tremors. And there were several other tremors, and a lot of us were very, very scared that our neck of the woods was going to get hit next. So you are going to be battling weather like a madman in Japan. But some people can get used to it. Some people can make do with it. I may do with it. It's not a be-all, end-all. But if you do not understand going in just how rough the weather really can be in Japan, you're in for a bad time. So let's keep going. Boom.
Of course, you can have a pet in Japan, and you're gonna often see those people at the park.
Oh.
But if you live in an apartment in a big city like Tokyo, it can be really difficult. Now, it depends on what kind of animal you want to have. If you
Alright, time out. I have to tell this. This is probably the only thing I'm gonna say about this, but Nobita is 100% correct when he's talking about, like, getting a pet is really, really difficult. It really is. Let me put it this way. There are policies in place where you can have a pet in some apartments, most of them not. But a lot of these policies, I remember one of my friends just tried to get a goldfish. A fish in a bowl yay big that had very little maintenance. He still had to pay basically like a cover charge, the same kind of cover charge you would have to pay if you were to have like a small dog or a small cat. They don't care. You're gonna get a pet, you're gonna put down a sort of premium in order to ensure against any damage, even when it comes to fish.
If it's a small pet, probably it's more likely to be okay. But still, many places in Japan are not so welcome about bringing a pet. Not just apartment, but also hotel, cafe, and so on. Even if you are allowed, they usually require extra money, like 20% more.
That's what I'm talking about.
Keep in mind, Japanese apartments are quite small, maybe too small.
Imagine 20% extra on your rent for a fish. Yeah.
To have a pet, and the walls are often thin, so maybe your neighbors are not happy and you might get a lot of complaints if your pet is quite noisy. In the end, Japan is not really a pet-friendly country, and it can be a big issue if you really like to have a pet. Number 8. Smoking. Now this is a non-smoker perspective. I'm sorry if you're a smoker. That would be a different story. So in Japan, smoking outside is not usually allowed, except for a certain specific area.
That's true.
Smoking inside is more likely to be okay. Like in a station, restaurant,
Right.
hotel, or cafe.
Right.
They usually offer some smoking rooms or areas. My biggest issue is, however, it's often not really separated, and you might have to deal with second-hand smoke
Secondhand
while
smoke,
eating,
yep.
which
Yep.
can be really annoying, but
Yep.
it can be much worse. When I
Yep.
was working for a Japanese company, I often had to go to izakaya with my boss.
Oh,
and
God.
They started smoking just next to me.
Yep.
And I'm almost dead. And I was really wishing Japan didn't allow people to smoke inside. Number 7.
I'm almost Dude, I feel ya on that. I super feel ya on that. Although I will say this. It's interesting that this is on the list because I never had that issue. Granted, Japan is still a very smoke-heavy country, but even like 5-10 years ago, which is quite a while, there is a lot of sectioning off of where to smoke and where not to smoke because it aggravates people who are non-smokers. So that was never really a huge issue, at least not for me. Now, even in izakaya, I've been to a lot of izakaya, and there's only been a handful of times where I even smelled any smoke whatsoever. So unless it's a really, really big issue, like you're allergic or you have bad reactions to secondhand smoke, it's not a huge issue. I don't know. I find it really interesting that was on his list. Like, I don't begrudge him. It's his list. But I found that was really interesting to have that one. I mean, it happens, yes, but it's really rare.
Job hopping. Of course, depending on your industry or profession, but usually this is considered quite negatively, at least compared to Canada, for example.
Right.
Now, when I say this, it's not like just 2 months or 3 months. That would be too bad in any country. Even if you have worked for 2 years, 3 years, or even 5 years, that's still not enough, and you are considered like not loyal or patient. And in the end, you might have a really hard time of finding a new job. So at least from my experience, the pressure you can't quit the job, even if you really don't like the company, is quite strong. By the way, according to a survey, Japanese are less likely to ask a higher pay, and they just deal with it. Maybe they feel guilty about that. To be fair, nowadays it's quite changing though. It's more and more common. And again, it depends on your industry. In some industries, it's quite common and acceptable.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
time
time out, Nobita. So you see how it says education is 48.8%? The thing is that, and this is the big exception that I've seen when it comes to job hopping, and I've got more to say about this, but just bear with me. Teachers in Japan will get bounced from school to school to school to school to school in their general area once every 3 some odd years. It really is odd how often that happens. I personally saw 5 or 6 different teachers get bounced in the 2 years that I was working abroad in the high school education system. It's completely normal. And the reason why, at least from what I've been told, is that it's to prevent certain teachers from gaining too much power. I don't know if that's true or not, but it makes a little, it can make sense. Like, there is a hierarchy. There's a hierarchy in every Japanese shop that you go to. But for education and teachers, it's something that I was like, I guess? But then why isn't that applied to other jobs? It's just, for whatever reason, if you get into the education industry in Japan, if you go to teach English or anything like that, you getting bounced around, for better or worse, is probably going to happen a lot more than you think. And it's not something that I would be too worried about. Now, if you're going to just get a regular industry job in Japan, like as a salaryman or something like that, yes, all these things apply. I would typically say that everything that he's talking about only really applies to Japanese people in Japan who are doing work. But if you're trying to get into that same kind of work, whether it be like office work or like blue collar work or whatever, same things are still going to apply.
When you look for a job in Japan. Number 6, unnecessary over.
Okay, well, I had more to say then. I will say, to all you Gaijin out there who are looking to get work in Japan, bouncing for you guys may happen a whole lot, and for the worst reasons. I will say right now, if you are going to go get a job in Japan, and it's not, God, even if it is teaching English, make sure you get a contract. Make sure that you are getting contracted work. Because if you don't, the education system, official and unofficial, like individual English schools, they'll abuse the heck out of it. I've heard of non-contracted teachers who were removed from their job entirely because a handful of students just didn't like them. Now, we're going to be talking about Wa and Harmony a little bit later, But, no, you're gonna get bounced around a lot if you do not find contracted work. So be sure to do that. And when you do find contracted work, stick with it. Nobita's completely correct. It is bad if you just get up and leave after like 2 years. I remember one of the big things is that a lot of Jets who would go and only stay for like a year and then leave would be looked down upon, not only by the Jet community, but also the other teachers in Japan, because, you know, it's like you're giving up. I left after 2 because I wanted to come here and get married. They knew that, so it was different. But no, don't job bounce if you can help it. Oh boy, this one's gonna be interesting.
Part-time work. Probably this is no need to explain. I seriously think that this is really bad for Japan. Nobody benefits. Even though more and more companies and the government start doing like this, the pressure is still quite strong. Like I said, I often had to go drinking with my boss after work. I felt like it's an obligation because everyone else was going there. The same goes to overtime work. I really didn't like that. At the same time though, I didn't want to be the first one leaving the office, and I am seen like a lazy worker. I'm sure many Japanese still feel pressure like that. Having said that, freelancing is getting common in Japan recently, and more people having flexible work lifestyle. See, you don't have to work for a company, and you can be self-employed. Maybe that would be your best choice in Japan. Number 5, no willingness to be better.
Oh, we'll get to that in a second. No, it's interesting because overtime work is still a problem. It is a huge problem in Japan still. I completely agree with that. But the thing is that a lot of the things that he talked about will only apply to you under 2 circumstances. One, you are Japanese working in a Japanese company, which a lot of you probably aren't. And the other one only really applies to people who are going in to get office positions, to get the same kind of jobs and get the same kind of employment as what, I guess, regular, everyday Japanese folks are trying to get. If you're in a position where you are like an English teacher, or you're there as like a special kind of assistant or things or something like that, something that isolates you as being a foreigner within a company, a workplace, whatever, a lot of this doesn't apply, because a lot of people in Japan will not place you on the same level as other people in Japan. They understand that your personal work, like your understanding of work culture, is going to be very, very different from theirs. So if you are the first one to get up and leave, no one's really going to hold against you because you're not a part of that system. So in a way it can apply, but in a lot of ways it doesn't. But I've seen it when it does, and it's horrifying. Just a quick anecdote. I remember I would typically get out at about 4:30. That's when I was contractually able to leave work. I would say my osaki ni shitsurei shimasu, I would leave. I would hear a lot of otsukare-sama coming back. And I mean, no one seemed really all that irritated. But I remember it was like 7, 8, maybe it's closer to 9 o'clock. I was out doing grocery shopping. And I walked by the school because I walk by the school on my way to and from my grocery store that I would go to. There are a lot of people with lights still on. Like, teachers have it rough in Japan. I'll probably do an entire video just talking about like what teachers have to go through in that whole process. But sorry, I digress. Let's keep going, because based on this, things are gonna get a little more crazy, I think.
What I mean by that, seems to me, most people don't care about Japan. Especially young Japanese are totally indifferent about the society, politics, and own country. Again, Japan is a wonderful country, but we have so many cultural issues.
Yes.
Definitely these problems should be addressed, and we need to start working on them. But we rarely have any meaningful conversation about that. People just look the other way and no willingness to fix it. Now, I'm not saying we have to be too focusing on the politics all the time, but it's quite depressing me, honestly. How could we improve the country if the people have no interest about the country? In Japan, public opinion often doesn't reflect the government decision. It's often not what people actually want, but people just don't care and are not serious about choosing the representatives. And these problems are likely to remain in many years. I'm not sure you really want to move to a country like that. Number 4. Japanese are fake.
Alright, time out for a little bit. I can't help but feel that goes beyond just like being in, like, moving to Japan or otherwise. It's kind of just a much larger problem that I've seen in Japan. Now I can get in trouble with talking about this, talking from the Gaijin perspective, but when I saw that, there's one thing that definitely kind of kicked back at me, and he's absolutely right. Like, all of these problems that he was posting up, like the issues with children and hikikomori and overworking, things like that, these are absolutely huge issues in Japan, and they're not really being taken all that seriously. Not really. Granted, a lot of them are not going to apply to you, but there can be a certain level of frustration as a foreigner going to live in Japan when you're sitting here thinking, like, why don't they do something about this? But, I mean, to be completely honest, unless you plan to, like, spend the rest of your life there, that kind of isn't your problem. That's their problem. And the best thing that you can do is encourage people to get away from what I call the shoganai syndrome. Shoganai syndrome, it's rooted from the concept of shikataganai or shoganai, which is basically, it can't be helped. That's what that means. You say, oh, well, this is a problem. Shoganai. And it's frustrating because I remember talking with a couple of friends about the aging problem. And I would ask, I said, you know, what would you do? Like, what do you think Japan should do in, like, 50 years when over half the population is going to be too old to work and probably too old to take care of themselves? And a lot of the answers that I got back was shoganai. And again, this is their problem. Like, we can't step in and try to interject ourselves into it. But what I always tried to do is try and encourage people to be like, no, really, think about it. Like, it's something that's you're gonna have to kind of look into. And some people will end up wanting to talk about that, but a lot won't. So it's kind of interesting that so much of Japan is willing to just not pay attention to their problems, but a lot of those problems won't affect you personally in your decision to move to Japan, but there will be a sort of, like, passive, like, man, why not? And that's something that you may have to deal with. Oh boy, number 4. Oh, I can't wait to talk about this one.
Nice. Now, it's nothing wrong with just being nice or polite, but when I say fake, they don't mean it. Sometimes completely lying about what they actually think in mind.
You can never trust Japanese people.
What?
It doesn't mean Japanese people treat you disrespectfully. A lot of times, it's actually opposite. When you ask them for directions or something, they can be really kind, friendly, and willing to help you a lot, even if they don't speak English well. But for example, what if you need to work with them and really need honest feedback or conversation? So here's what happens quite often. You've done something not right on the job and your coworkers noticed. Rather than telling you that directly, they go to the manager and tell him about your mistake. And the manager sending you an email about your mistake, even though his desk is just right there. It sounds crazy, but this is actually not so uncommon. People are just too afraid of saying something directly and honestly, and they don't know how to handle conflict. And a lot of times, Japanese people are just being passive aggressive. Especially if you are a foreigner, maybe they are more likely to be.
For Japanese people, you can take 5 different people and the person is going to be acting differently with all of them. Where is the true person's personality? And you can never know that. And that's why it's very difficult to trust. You can know the person for years and know nothing about. That's the biggest complaint I have.
Number 3. Japan.
Ooh! No! Wholeheartedly disagree with that statement. Wholeheartedly disagree with that statement. Can you trust Japanese folks to be honest? I mean, it's so situational. But I believe that statement to be untrue. You can't trust Japanese. You absolutely can. Here's the thing. You gotta roll with wa. You have to roll with harmony. You have to roll with what they're comfortable with. The idea of to know someone for years and know nothing about them, that's so not true. Because you will learn as much as they want to share. Like, I think we'll be getting more into this later, but it's like, when it comes to, like, befriending them, and, like, you can't trust them, that's absolutely not true. It is a matter of how much are they willing to open up to you. And that should be a human normality, like, that a human normalcy, if that's even a word. Like, we'll get more into that later. Boosh.
don't get sarcasm. Now, it doesn't mean they have a low IQ and don't understand any jokes. But the Japanese people have a unique and different sense of humor, just like British people. And sometimes, you totally don't understand why they are laughing or not laughing. It's quite frustrating me sometimes, because when I was in Canada, we just make fun of each other and joke about it, and that's totally okay. That's what friends do each other, right? But in Japan, people take it too seriously or even get offended by that. To be fair, I used to be like that because I didn't have this kind of concept at that time. Anyway, you might be quite frustrated because your humor doesn't work in Japan. Number 2, it's hard to make friends.
Okay. I'll just say, look, to be fair, a lot of cultures don't get sarcasm. Heck, a lot of people in general don't get sarcasm. This is just a big blanket statement when interacting and trying to make friends in Japan. Be mindful about feeling out the situation before you try to make a joke or say anything. Like, you've got to learn how to read people to a certain degree because that's how Japan as a society functions. Just do that. Like, it's really interesting that's not getting sarcasm was, you know, on the list. I never ran into that. You know, just do what the Romans do. Trust me, Japanese humor is great.
Like I said, you can't really trust what the Japanese people say, so you may be having a really hard time of telling who are your real friends. Everyone seems superficial. And the thing is, most Japanese people in Japan grew up in Japan, surrounded by Japanese people and familiar with Japanese people only. It can be really hard to integrate in that kind of society and make real friends. So the truth is, most foreigners, as far as I know, they just hang out with other foreigners. In most cases, they don't have any native Japanese friends. Not just because of language barrier, but it's more like because of cultural difference. I actually often hear that Japanese people are too used to their own culture and not willing to understand any other culture. So let me ask you, do you really want to move to a country you can't be friends with any of the native people? Maybe it's not a big deal for you, but I would be quite sad about that. It all comes down to this. Number 1, separation between...
No. Time out. Yes, it can be difficult to make friends in Japan. It can be absolutely difficult to make friends in Japan, but it can be hard to make friends anywhere. It all really depends on your personality type. Here's the thing. Now, agree or disagree however you want, but for me, in my experience, it's not that the cultural issue is the problem when it comes to folks, like, trying to make friends with folks in Japan. It's time. I've met a lot of people in Japan. Some of them I developed deeper friendships with, others I didn't. I mean, that's just the nature of how friendships work. But the thing is that a lot of folks over there, you've heard me rant about how long they have to work. Nobita talks about in multiple videos about how long they have to work, how much overtime they have to clock in. I think we actually talked about it in this video. But my point is that it's not that a lot of people in Japan are completely disinterested in you, either because of like cultural differences or racism or whatever. It's that they probably just don't have time. A lot of my friends that I made that I knew they were my friends, a lot of just said, I've just got work, and I believed it because I know how much they have to work over there. So, I think it's more of a time issue. And when that happens, you know, when someone says, I have this time off to go hang out, take that time. Because it's gonna be, unless you're working the same kind of office job that they are, chances are you're probably gonna have more free time than they do. Take that opportunity, because it may be a rarity that they have time that they can give to you, especially if they have a family. If they're married with kids and they actually have some time to hang out with you, that's a rarity. But even if it's an issue with comfort, people will open up to you. It's gonna be much slower because there is that cultural difference, but I don't think it's a cultural difference that will prevent them from opening up to you. People will open up to you as much as they are comfortable with. And that is what all friendships should be. You should not expect anything more or less from people. I had friends who really did open up to me a whole lot. One of them I'll probably talk about in an individual video. And then there are some where I got to talk to them maybe once a month, and that was okay. I can agree. Look, I can agree that for a lot of Japanese people who have never left Japan, they can be cautious about making friends with you. But, you know, it's something that I was spouting to my kids. Ningen wa ningen da. People are people. It may take a lot longer than you want for people to open up to you, but it will eventually happen. And by the way, to the point where it's like, Japanese have no willingness to understand other cultures. Hey, newsflash for you guys. You're in Japan. You're living in Japan. You need to meet them halfway because you at least owe them that much. And the interesting thing is that when you do try to meet them halfway, they'll open up. I said it before in other videos. They'll open up like absolute crazy. And that's when you can foster really, really tight, good relationships with people. So, separation, oh boy. Alright, let's see how this goes.
Japanese and non-Japanese. It's not just like white people or black people, but even many Asians, like Koreans or Chinese, who have been living in Japan for more than 10 years, complain like this. Now, needless to say, not all Japanese treat you like that. Some people like me don't even care you are Japanese or not. But compared to the US or Canada, where I used to live, I can say this for sure. Many Japanese don't treat non-Japanese in the same way, and they make a clear distinction. So people are overly nice or polite and treat you like a 5-year-old child. Or they can be really rude or offensive, like staring at you all the time, judging you like that just based on your looks or nationality. Even if you speak fluent Japanese and know about Japanese culture a lot, some people still treat you like that, and you might feel excluded a lot. Again, do you really want to move to a country like that? Like I said, Japan has so many great things as
Okay, time out. Hang on. Couple of statements to make here. So, first of all, he talks about the separation between Japanese and non-Japanese people and how Japanese don't treat foreigners the same way as Japanese would treat each other. That kind of goes back... Do you guys remember in a past video I talked about one of the biggest issues right now is giving foreigners the benefit of the doubt? I think that kind of applies here. Bottom line, in my opinion, make foreigners responsible for understanding Japan's culture, language, etc. if they are going to go there. Not perfectly, but to the degree in which they do not make other people uncomfortable. And at the same time, for people who are trying, for foreigners who are trying to integrate into Japan as much as they can, like, give them allow them to feel more integrated. Put them up, like, have them up to the standard of, okay, well, we're gonna treat you like you do understand our language, our culture, and our unspoken rules and things like that. Now, to go to this idea of potential racism. Racism is a human problem, period. It's not a Japanese, it's not intensified in Japan. Because what I think ends up happening is that there is a misunderstanding between blatant racism in Japan and people who are just really nervous because they don't know how to act around you. Like, he showed a Japan only, like a Japanese only sign. But here's the context behind that. Those are typically in like restaurants and other establishments like that, and most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, the reason that they have that policy isn't because they just don't want dirty foreigners in their business. The staff can't speak English and their managers don't want to put their workers through that really huge hassle and stress of dealing with a communications breakdown, because that's exactly what's going to happen. You guys know, we know each other. We know that there are going to be people going into a Japanese restaurant and only using English, and how stressed out that's going to make staff. So there is a separation. There absolutely is a separation. But that separation only lasts as long as the folks who are in Japan believe that you don't understand them. I've said this 100 times now, and I'm going to say it 100 more times as I make more of these videos. You meet folks in Japan halfway, they will meet you back. And this is when you can foster really great relationships. So while I do agree that there is a pretty big separation between Japanese and non-Japanese people, I don't think that should really be that big of a discouraging factor, because that's kind of just how it is. Show them, prove to them that you are willing to learn and understand and integrate into their society. You have to meet them. You cannot go to Japan expecting everyone. You can't be a garbage tourist. You cannot go to Japan, live in Japan, move Japan, whatever. You can't go there and expect people to treat you just like super hunky-dory. It just doesn't work that way. You have to show them that you're willing to integrate into their culture. And when you do, great things happen. So let's see this wrap.
as a country, but you shouldn't focus on them only. If you move to Japan, you need to acknowledge the negative aspect as well and really think about your happiness. Do that, maybe you're gonna realize Japan is not the best country you wanna move to. It's not because Japan is a bad country or you are a bad person either. It just means Japan is not the right country for you. And that's okay. Japan is not for everyone. And I don't think Japan should be. But at the end of the day, you don't really know that until you actually move here. So if you still really want to move to Japan, why not? It's your choice in the end.
Hang on. There are too many forests fascinating about Japan, Romy. Nobita, I hope you let them know the reality of the country, the good and the bad. My grandma. Nobita, your grandma's awesome. And she's absolutely right. It's interesting because there were a lot of times in this video where I was like, okay, I agree with that. There are other times where it's like, I don't know why this made the list, and then there are other times where it's like, yeah, but. So, look, as someone who lived in Japan, there are going to be ups and downs. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs. But there's going to be ups and downs no matter where you live. There's going to be unique ones when you live abroad. I mean, it's going to be the same to any country that you move to. Japan does have its own unique set of problems, but it's not something that I think a lot of people can't overcome. You just have to identify what you're getting into when you go over. So just understand what you're getting into when you go to Japan. I mean, you could take my opinion and Nobita's opinion with a grain of salt that I hope y'all do. But I mean, research it. I mean, you wouldn't move to a country not knowing anything about it. So just pay attention, research it, and really think hard about the good and the bad. Don't get blinded by rose-tinted glasses. I think that's all we're both trying to say. So, yeah, I think it'll be okay. But what do you guys think? Like, do you want to go move to Japan? And if so, what are some of the things that you might be worried about? What are some of the things that you're looking forward to? What are some of the things that you think you'll be able to power through? I want to know. Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching, everyone. And remember, this is all just from a Gaijin perspective. Hope to have more videos out soon. Please go check out Nobita. I love this guy. I love the content that he makes. Go check out the video that we put together. I have a whole lot more to say about my life in Japan over in the video that I did with him. So, yeah, go check that out, everyone. And until next time, this is Gaijin, signing out.